Everyone can hear me and the screen visible to all. Am I audible?
बच्चे नहीं आ रहे अभी लिंक शेयर करना शायद हाँ तो लिंक शेयर करना तो वेट करो तो रिवाइज कर लो ठीक है
Okay, everyone can hear? And the screen visible to all? Okay, so there were some technical issues regarding it. So yes, the nuclear membrane may be present. That means it will be in disrupted manner, or it is maybe in a developing state, or it'll be completely absent, or either it'll be forming, right? And in the previous class, somebody asked that in bacteria, what functions are performed by the in place of mitochondria. So that the answer to that is mesosomes. Right, so answer to that will be the mesosomes. So mesosomes are the one that is responsible. They are the enfoldings of the membrane. They are the enfoldings of the membrane that helps you to, that consist of number of pigments, that consist of the cellular respiration ones, and so on. Right, okay, so let's begin then. So we were discussing about this table, and it says that Monera is having the autotrophic as well as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So majority of the organisms is going to have the heterotrophic nutrition. Whereas if we come to the next phyla, that is Protista. Protista have eukaryotic organisms, very important. It is the characteristics of the unicellular organisms, but they are eukaryotic. So cell wall, they are present in some. However, we have to see if it is present. So in what form it is usually present. Then body organization is again cellular. You does not find a tissue level of organization or something other than that, right? So the restriction of the cellular organization remains to the cellular level. And then you have the autotrophic mode of nutrition as well as the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So both the modes of nutrition is equally important. Fungi, and that is the next kingdom. Fungi, that is eukaryotic organisms, right? So and you have a cell wall present which is made up of chitin and polysaccharides. Then nuclear membrane is completely absent, and the body organization is multicellular. Now the fungi, and this was the reason on which we have divided the fungi from the plant kingdom also and from the animals also, right? So that is multicellular, loose tissue, and the mode of nutrition is heterotrophic. Or heterotrophic may, it can be autotrophic, or it can be the saprophytic, or it can be the parasitic. Next is kingdom plantae. Kingdom plantae has most common, characteristics. So that is that they have a eukaryotic organization. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. That is the most common, that is the most common compound, or the carbohydrate source which is in the cell wall. Then you have the nuclear membrane as present, because the nuclear membrane is there, and tissue or organ level. हालांकि जो प्लांट्स होते हैं उनमें टिश्यू लेवल ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो है वो रहता ही रहता है. In some you can see the organs also, but more or less the tissue level of organization is the one that is main responsible, right? Plantae, only mode of nutrition will be the autotrophic mode of nutrition and nothing else. So it is only be the autotrophic mode of nutrition and nothing else. It does not have any plant which is heterotrophic. अगर heterotrophic होगा तो वो eukaryotic के साथ ही होगा. Otherwise, the complete plants will going to have the autotrophic mode of nutrition. Then is Animalia. The cell type is eukaryotic. The cell wall is completely absent. So this will be the one that will be, a completely differentiable body. Right. So since the animal cells do not possess any kind of the cell wall, so that is why the cell wall will be absent. Tissue, organ or organ system depend करता है कि अब जब animal kingdom we are going to study, तो you have the referral system with that कि cellular level of organization भी है, tissue level of organization भी है, organ and organ system level of organization is also there. And then mode of nutrition is heterotrophic. Obviously, no organism from the animals will going to possess the autotrophic mode of nutrition, because it is somewhat restricted to the plantae. The main that one is surrounding is the plantae that have the autotrophic mode of nutrition. However, the animals are dependent either on them. Right, so either they will be dependent on the prokaryotes or somewhere or the other, whichever organisms are there, either they are directly dependent on it or they are indirectly dependent on it, right? So these are the basic characteristics, right? So basic characteristics of the 5 kingdom classification, right? So, and these are the basic characteristics of that. Right, so let's begin then. So let's go up in a little detail. These are the basic characteristics that you have to keep in mind while we jump on to the main part, right? When we start discussing about the kingdom Monera, Protista, Plantae and Animalia in detail, we just need to configure a few common characteristics which are here, right? So they are characteristics. So let's begin with the first kingdom, that is kingdom Monera. Right, so kingdom Monera is the first one that will be described. That is Monera. So Monera jo tha, that was first proposed by the Copeland, right? And Doherty and Ellen describe or termed this phyla of bacteria, this kingdom of bacteria as the Monerans. Right, so they are the kingdom Monera. So let's begin that. So Monera consists of bacteria as the sole members, right? You does not have any other members in it. You does not have any other characteristics, any other characteristic of some other organism in it. You does not have them. So bacteria jo hai, that are the sole members of the Monerans. So it says that bacteria are the most abundant microorganisms. And that is why there was a need to put them in the separate phylum, right? So like that. So bacteria, they act as the sole members. Bacteria are the most abundant microorganisms, and hundreds of bacteria are present. And they are, Cosmopolitan bacteria जो होते हैं, they are the ones that will be present everywhere, no matter what, right? Even in higher temperatures also, अगर तुम देखोगे Thermus aquaticus जैसे bacteria जो हैं, they stay in the higher temperatures, right? So you find a complete cosmopolitan का मतलब होता है जो that could be present everywhere, right? It is not restricted to the soil, or it is not restricted to a place or something. It will be present everywhere. One or the other species will going to be present everywhere, right? So bacteria jo hain, that are the most abundant organisms. Hundreds of bacteria could be present. So bacteria have a very high mode of reproduction, so that is why it is. So they also live in extreme habitats such as hot springs. मतलब कहीं पर भी देख लो, अगर कोई नॉर्मल कंडीशंस में तो होगा ही होगा, और अगर डिफरेंट कंडीशंस में होगा, सो दे आर मतलब डिफरेंट एक्सट्रीम एनवायरमेंटल ड्रॉट, सलाइनिटी, hot temperature, very cold temperature, you couldn't find the bacteria even there also. And obviously majority are heterotrophs. अगर heterotrophs की हम बात करें तो उसमें saprophytic भी आता है और उसमें parasitic भी आता है. So we have some which are parasitic, and which we have some which are act as a saprophytic, and the other group of organisms will be the autotrophic one. So basically जो bacteria होता है, that could be formed in many forms. Before we do that, I just wanted to tell you one thing, that if we talk about the bacterias, right? If we talk about the bacterias, जो Anton van Leeuwenhoek था, right? Anton van Leeuwenhoek first noticed the bacteria for the first time, and from the very tartar of the teeth, right? So that is Anton van Leeuwenhoek was the first to tell something about a bacteria. Moreover, Ehrenberg, right? Ehrenberg is the one that have coined the term bacteria. So it is with coining the term bacteria. Right. So Ehrenberg and Leeuwenhoek, you need to know that with respect to the Leeuwenhoek, he was the first that described or tells about the bacteria, whereas Ehrenberg tha, he has first termed the bacteria. Right. This was important. Let's come up to the next. Now, there are bacteria could be, can be placed in various forms, right? Bacteria could be found in various forms, and these bacterial forms could be like basically based upon how they look like, right? What will be the morphology of it, or in which form do it possesses? So that will be the forms, various forms. So bacteria, on a broader note, it can be like spherical. It can be rod-like, that means elongated tubular type, or it can be spherical type, or it can be comma-shaped, or it can be in the form of spiral. So you have a number of examples that throw in like Streptococcus pneumoniae, Vibrio cholerae, जो comma shaped होता है, that is an example of Vibrio cholerae. Then you have the coccus form, that means the circular or the spherical forms will be the ones that will be the coccal forms, whereas the rod one, elongated ones will be the bacterio bacillus, bacilli उसको बोलते हैं, common terms में हम उसको rod shape कह देते हैं, but in the scientific term it is referred to as the bacilli forms. So you have different forms of that. Spirillum is a spiral-like, it will be coiled somewhere or the other. Right. So if we talk about next, we have discussed that okay, bacteria can belong to any class. These forms could belong to any of the forms. It does no matter कि Archae bacteria will only be restricted to a particular form. No, it can be in any forms. Right. So nutrition, if we talk about that, the bacteria structure is very simple. Since it is a prokaryotic organism, so it would be very simple in their organization and do not possess, a very elaborate or very complex system. However, we can say that, okay, once we started to it, we could really assume that they have a very simple structure. So therefore, and their mode of nutrition would be simple in that since always. So bacterial structure is very simple, but they have a complex behavior that shows the metabolic diversity, and this is the reason why the bacteria could be present anywhere. So obviously the environmental conditions do influence a person's nutritional levels or nutritional requirements. So since the bacteria are cosmopolitan, so it can be found anywhere, right? So depending upon that, they have the different sources of the nourishment. So some bacteria are autotrophic, synthesized from food, from the inorganic sources, and simple, just like the plant, simple, they use the simple inorganic compounds and then they go further. So majority are heterotrophs. They do not synthesize the food but depend upon the other organisms. So before we move on to the classification, I just wanted to tell you one thing, that something about the reproduction part, right? Or else we'll do it right. If we talk about okay, let's talk about the reproduction in bacteria. So if we talk about the reproduction in bacteria, since we have discussed the other structures also, and however when we do in the detail in the classification system, classification में हम ये पढ़ेंगे कि हर किसी की जो class होती है, how it is different from the other and what all forms could be easily be seen from there. Right. So reproduction on a basic note, I can just tell you that reproduction जो होता है, it is in the form of asexual, or it can be the sexual form. Right, so it can be the asexual form or it can be the sexual form. अब क्या होता है कि asexual form में just like you have binary fission, right? That is the most common, right? That is the most common form of reproduction. That is the binary fission. However, in a few you can still see the fragmentation, you can still see the budding in it. And you can still see the budding in it. However, the main one is the binary fission. Binary fission, say it can be changed into the multiple fission also, but however, the binary fission is the most favorite of the reproductive process that the bacteria undergoes. And when we talk about the sexual mode of reproduction, the sexual mode of reproduction is quite interesting in cases of bacteria. So sexual reproduction is governed by the thing that, okay, there is an exchange of the genetic material. जब भी एक पेरेंट दूसरे पेरेंट के साथ अपना जर्म प्लाज्म ब्लेंड करता है या फिर इट मिक्सेस अप, दैट इज रेफर्ड टू एज योर sexual mode of reproduction. That is what we actually do in the sexual mode of reproduction. There is blending of the germplasm from the two parents, and when there is blending of the germplasm of the two parents, what do you find? That we have some new characteristics which are being exhibited, and once they are exhibited, now और उसी सेम लाइंस पे जो बैक्टीरिया है that have the sexual mode of reproduction, but it is, yes, there do occurs the exchange of the genetic material, but it has some different forms of this exchange. We have some different forms of the exchange of the genetic material to this. For example, the first sexual mode of reproduction, now it has the mode of, otherwise I told you that sexual mode of reproduction, just you require a biparental condition and then you can produce the gametes and then the offspring will be produced. However, there is a slight deviation in bacteria with respect to the sexual mode of reproduction. Right, with respect to sexual mode of reproduction, the first process that is exhibiting is transformation. Right, the transformation says that there is a cell. That cell possesses its a germplasm. That germplasm is, directly spreaded in the environment and it is taken up by some other bacterial cell. So obviously with his germplasm, that would be blended and it going to have the same genetic material of its own also, and the one that he had acquired from the environment also. So that is transformation. So transformation is nothing but कि भाई जैसे एक bacterial cell है, उसने अपना genetic material जो है that is spreaded freely in the environment, and some other, let's suppose a B bacterial cell takes up that genetic material, और जब वो genetic material को it can take up, so that means it is going to blend itself, and once it going to blend itself, so it is going to have the genetic levels of the A cell also and genetic level of the bacterial B cell also. So it is going to possess the germplasm of the bacterial cell A, and it is obviously going to possess the genetic material of cell B also, right? So this is referred to as your transformation. Next is transduction. Right. Transduction is slight, different from that of the transformation. What happens is, let's suppose you have a bacterial cell A. It has, given his genetic material directly into the environment, and this material and this genetic material is taken up by the viruses. Right, they are taken up by the viruses, and once they are taken up the viruses, transfer it to bacterial cell B. So the only difference between transformation and transduction is, here the genetic material is freely spreadable in the environment, whereas in transduction it is carried by the viruses which act as a vector to it. However, the third form of sexual mode of reproduction is conjugation. Right, it is referred to as your conjugation. What happens in conjugation is that there is a genetic material of cell A, right? It will, closely be associated, physically associated with some other cell. It will be, coming closer by, and once it is coming closer by, it will be, exchanging their genetic material, and this exchange that you could see, it is done with the help of a conjugation tube. अब ये दोनों ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन और ट्रांसडक्शन से हाउ इट इज डिफरेंट, इट इज डिफरेंट इन द सेंस दैट yes, there is no spread, direct spread into the environment, only that the difference is that the genetic material is transferred from one cell to the another with the help of a tube, which is referred to as your conjugation tube. So these are the different forms of the genetic material in different organisms, right? So this is how it goes. So sexual mode of reproduction, if we're talking about the bacteria, so they are different forms, that is transformation, transduction, and the conjugation part. So conjugation, you require the physical association. However, for transduction and transformation, it does not require any physical association. The only thing requires is you have, in transduction, you need some viruses in order to transmit it to the later organism. Are we clear with this? So this is the basic part of the reproduction part, that is going to have the asexual mode of reproduction also, and don't worry, you will going to watch this video again, so you're never going to miss anything, I guess. But still, if you have some doubts, you can come up anytime, right dear? So these are the reproduction. So अगर हम देखें कि there are different modes of reproduction, you have asexual and sexual mode of reproduction. So basically हमें asexual mode तो हम पढ़ते ही आ रहे हैं बहुत उससे कि yes, I can definitely repeat conjugation. Let me explain you conjugation then. Okay, what happens in conjugation is that you have a bacterial cell A and you have a bacterial cell B. They come in close physical association. They get physically associated, and once they get physically associated, there is formation of a conjugation tube. Can you see this? There is a formation of a conjugation tube, and through this tube only there is transfer of genetic material from cell A to B and from B to A. So this is how it goes. So there is formation of the conjugation tube between the two cells when they are sufficiently closer by. right? So once they are closer by, they will exchange their genetic material. तो basically यहाँ पे sexual mode of reproduction हम कहते हैं कि it is the exchange of the genetic material, so which is well relevant for that of your bacteria also. So bacteria also possesses a sexual mode of reproduction with transformation, transduction and conjugation process. However, asexual reproduction is also quite common in it, right? Okay, so let's move forward. So we've done with the bacterial. Now we know on a broader note what is the nourishment for it, what is the mode of reproduction. However, different classes के different organisms के अंदर you find different types of modes, you find different types of modes of reproduction also. But however, on a note हम पढ़ लेते हैं कि भाई एक बैक्टीरिया के अंदर ये वाले प्रोसेसेस भी हैं या ये वाली चीजें भी चल रही हैं और दूसरी भी है, राइट? इट डिपेंड्स. बेसिकली ज्यादातर देखा गया है कि एक ही सेल जो है दैट इज एक्सचेंजिंग द जेनेटिक मटेरियल विद इट. अदरवाइज देयर आर चांसेस कि दोनों के जेनेटिक मटेरियल जो है वो एक्सचेंज हो जाए, राइट? Okay, next we come to the classification. The bacteria are classified into only two groups, that is Archae Bacteria and Eubacteria. The Archae Bacteria is the one which is very older or which is very primitive, whereas the Eubacteria is the most advanced form, right? It is the most advanced form and it usually possesses most of the advanced characteristics. Right, so Archae Bacteria की आगे 3 classes हैं. Halophils. Halophils, that means the one that will be staying up in the salty environmental conditions or very saline environmental conditions. Right, then you have the thermoacidophils, that means that have the very high temperature ranges. And methanogens are the ones that is going to possess and form the methane. So they're going to have the methane producing machinery in them and goes there. So Eubacteria, it can be autotrophic and heterotrophic depending upon usually mode of nutrition या कहाँ पर वो usually survive करते हैं, उस basis पे bacteria को जो है वो divide किया गया है. That is Archae Bacteria and it have the Eubacteria. And one by one we're going to discuss. So if we call about the Archae Bacteria, so usually the bacterial classes are divided into 3 groups. Right, so if we talk about the Archae Bacteria is, Archae means which is very primitive, right, which is very, very primitive, and it consists of 3 classes again, that is the halophils, that is the thermoacidophils, and which have the methanogens. So basically जो Archae Bacteria होता है उसका जो mode of जहाँ पर रहने का है या habitat है, that is quite very different and that is quite very extreme. Right, that is very extreme. So Archae Bacteria is halophils. Halophils are the one that is going to be present in the very salt, saline areas. Whereas the thermoacidophils, देखा है PCR में हम एक enzyme use करते हैं which is known as Thermus aquaticus. If you remember it, Thermus aquaticus जो सबसे पहले denaturation में काम आता है, जब भी हमने 2 strands of DNA को we have to break it up, and once we have to break it up, that Thermus aquaticus को जब हमने break करना होता है तो वहाँ पे Thermus aquaticus, because it is done at 92 degrees Celsius, so at that temperature usually जो रहता है वो ये रहता है कि ऑब्वियसली ऑल द एंजाइम्स, ऑल द माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिज्म यूजुअली क्या करते हैं कि डीनेचर करते हैं अपने आप को एट वेरी हाई टेम्परेचर्स और एट वेरी लो टेम्परेचर. सो एट अ वेरी हाई टेम्परेचर और लो टेम्परेचर्स पे बहुत कम माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स जो होते हैं वो सर्वाइव कर पाते हैं. उनमें से एक होता है थर्मस aquaticus, which is a bacteria which belongs to the class of thermoacidophils of the Archae bacteria. And then you have the methanogens. Methanogens are the one that will produce the methane gas. So these are the only one. Halophils में you can have the examples of halococcus. Thermoacidophils में you can have the perfect example that is being utilized in the PCR1, that is Thermus aquaticus. And in methanogens you're going to have the methane gas produces methanogens, which are methanobacillus, methanococcus, methanospirillum. So you have a different kinds of it. So you just have to remember that all the extreme environmental conditions. Why it is more ancient? Because ancient जब भी evolution हुआ था earth का, over the ancient earth, at that time the environmental conditions were not very profound, right? So they were not very profound in it. So that is why we're going to have something in relation that could relate them why they are referred to as your primitive, because they occupy the primitive earth where the environmental conditions were not up to the optimum level which can be for the survival. So therefore they could able to survive very harsh or very extreme environmental conditions. So they Archae bacteria have halophils, thermoacidophils and methanogens. So that will be releasing the methano, और ये particularly anaerobic conditions में होती है, that is without oxygen. I hope if you have studied in biogas plant, that biogas plant have the methanogens in it that produces the methane gas and so. So इसीलिए जो methanogens होते हैं they are the ones which are widely utilized, और इसीलिए हम उनको sewage treatment जैसे या biogas plant में we are using it to a much greater extent, right? So Archae bacteria is, and then we come to the U bacteria. The U bacteria is the one that is going to possess, very specialized and very advanced characteristics. So bacteria की वो class जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा advanced है और बहुत ही ज़्यादा achievable form में है, that is U bacteria. I think we should be stopping up here. And there were some technical issues today, so we couldn't complete our topic. But in the next class, we will definitely be going further with it, and we'll definitely going to wrap up this chapter so that we can start up with plant kingdom, right? So goodbye for now, and I'll see you then, and keep working hard. Thank you, everyone.